Late last week, we got the latest disgusting idea from Marvel Comics where they're going to make your comic book shop be the bad guy and upcharge on cover prices by not giving them discounts. And we're basically just in the middle of the slow death of the local comic book shop, not because they don't know what they're doing or they don't love comic books or they don't want to be a part of the industry anymore, but basically Marvel and DC and a lot of the American comic book publishers are forcing them to go a different route. And here to talk to me about that is my good friend Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing well, Wes. Doing well. Doing better than your average comic book retailer, I can tell you that.
Now, you used to, or maybe still do, work for a couple of local comic book shops. You're doing ordering, but I know the shops you work for basically stopped ordering new comics altogether.
Yeah, I did a cost-benefit analysis for them based on the amount of square footage in their store that was taken up by comic books versus what it was costing them versus what they were making on them. And it wasn't worth the square footage to carry comic books anymore.
And this is not something that's abnormal. In fact, I reached out to the viewers of the channel in a community post. I had someone reach out and say, hey, in the last 10 years, my comic book shop has gone from a comic shop to a manga and like collectibles shop. And it's kind of crazy. So I said, what has your comic book shop done over the last 10 to 20 years? And I got a lot of responses, I believe over 100. And these are just some of the ones that I thought were very interesting and really emblematic for the most part about what I was hearing almost across the board. There are a couple of instances where people reached out and they said, you know what, my comic book shop hasn't changed in the last 20 years. Or my comic book shop is actually able to make it selling new comic books. But that was only like 2 or 3 of the comments. Most of them was more something like this. This is what Hicksvilla9865 said. My old LCS closed last year. Sold off their entire comic stock and moved to another state to concentrate on just toys. Walked through a comic shop in a mall. The Marvel DC comics were all the way in the back of the store in a corner. It was like the porn section in old video rental stores. You felt dirty just looking at them.
You had to go through a curtain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad. That's really sad. That used to just be where the kids' comics were. Comic shops used to love to do that. They'd cram the kids' comics in the back so that kids could never find them. But now it's just Marvel and DC and everybody. That's really depressing to hear.
Yeah, it's pretty emblematic. I remember when I was living in San Antonio, I used to go to Heroes and Fantasies, which is an enormous comic book shop. And I believe that's the first store that gave Tim Lemon his break in comic books. Good guys. Love the store, but their comic book selection was absolutely all the way in the back when you walked in. It was tabletop gaming. It was Magic the Gathering. It was Funko Pops, T-shirts, action figures, statues, everything in the world associated with comic books and gaming. But the comic books were in the back, and quite frankly, there wasn't a whole lot of foot traffic.
No, it's just gotten worse. The worse that Marvel and DC have gotten with their writing, with their art, with the way that they do events, everything for their pricing, everything from top to bottom. It's just people are tired of it. It's not a good value for the money that it demands.
Yeah, it's too bad. This is what Winter Soldier 73 had to say. I stopped going to my LCS about 2 years ago. For years, the owner refused to stock more than 3 or 4 manga titles and anime about the same. He did carry a lot of trade paperbacks, but didn't carry any omnibuses, absolutes, or compendiums. What he did carry was merch, shirts, and the like, as well as toys, cards, and Gundam kits. But the entire left wall was all new comics, as well as some of the right leading to the register, and the center of the store was all back issues. My son told me when he walked into the store now, you are greeted by manga. All the way to the back wall, the small section to the right leads to the register is all new Western comics, so he shrunk that by at least 95%. He also got rid of the back issue section, doesn't even sell them in the store anymore. Absolutely hearing this a lot about local comic book shops in America, that essentially manga is taking over in a lot of these places. They're having to get rid of the DC, the Marvel, Image, and all that stuff to make way for manga because it's actually selling.
Yeah, and as far as back issues go, it doesn't really behoove you to have a bunch of back issues sitting out where people can thumb through them like we used to, back in the 90s, 80s, 90s. When we'd go to the store, there was just massive tables and tables of back issues so you could complete your runs and go through. I miss that. But it's not lucrative for the amount of square footage that, what they're paying for that space. They can throw those online and sell them, and then just devote the store space to, things that actually move at the store level. Anime, manga, figures, Funko Pops, all the things that people come in looking for, because they ain't coming in looking for comics.
Yeah, and that's the worst thing. I mean, I love going to a comic book shop and you finally find the dollar section or just the back issue section, and you're thumbing through there and you're trying to find some of those issues that you've been missing out on a personal favorite run. It doesn't have to be something that's like a key comic book or whatever. But, I'm looking for old school Valiant stuff. I'm looking for original Exo Man of War, original Rye comics. I'm looking for Turok. I'm talking about Man the Atom and all that stuff. And it's all kind of going away to make way for manga. And I think manga is great. But my goodness, there should be a place in an American comic book shop for them to actually sell American comic books, but nobody wants to buy them anymore. No one's even interested.
Yeah, and the problem is because Marvel and DC have driven that audience away. They wanted a new audience that doesn't exist, and the portion of it that does exist doesn't have any money. They just pirate it. So, there's nobody coming in. There's no driving factor to get you in to a comic book store. If you go in and, it used to be the new comics that came out every week drove traffic into the store at least 2 days a week. Wednesdays and Saturdays generally were, the big days. And people would come in and they'd be like, hey, as long as I'm here, I'm going to go, thumb through the back issues. That doesn't exist anymore because Marvel and DC can't put a butt in the seat.
Nobody that doesn't like comics is like, I should really open up a comic book shop. Obviously that happened during the 90s when everyone thought that they were going to make $1 million off every issue of Superman or whatever. But if you're still in the comic book game and you still got an active Diamond account and an active Looter account and Penguin Random House for comic books, you really love comic books. It must kill people to have to stop, presenting these as their main product anymore.
Yeah, especially back issues. That's where a lot of the love is. People really love the stuff that they grew up with. And, back when the stories were good and the Marvel universe was cohesive and, you had group editors that kept everything, consistent. So it really did feel like you were getting involved in this larger universe that you could really dig into. And that doesn't exist anymore. Now it's just a bunch of fly-by-night books that don't matter, that are just churned out so that there's something on the shelf so that, Marvel can put 10 covers on it and try and maintain their bottom line. And DC, if you want to see sell DC comics, don't open a comic book store, open a Pride store and then carry DC comics in the back.
Well, they'll actually go out and promote your comic book shop if you do that. This is what Nick Cards 88 said. There was only one LCS in my area and had been for decades, though it has changed ownership at least once. Its story is told in the names it wore the last few years as it went from Pyramid Comics to Pyramid Comics and Games to Orbital Games and Comics to just Orbital Games. The shop gave up carrying new comics altogether as they simply do not sell. The shop lives on tabletop gaming and manga now.
Because those things appeal to a broad audience, and comics has decided to make itself even more and more niche as the years go by. So yeah, I don't blame them. I think it's a wise decision. That's exactly what we did at the shops that I order for. Is I looked at, hey, what's driving sales right now? Believe it or not, Funko still huge. One of the stores carries Disney pins, so that's a big seller for them. They're right down the street from Disneyland, so they get that going. And then the biggest thing that was moving that was on the upswing was anime figures. And on an anime figure, you can make a 50% profit. You can't do that on a comic book.
Exactly. How much was the margin? What was the comic book shops hoping to make when they sold an A cover? Like 10 to 15 cents?
Yeah, if that. I mean, you could maybe make $1 on something if you were lucky. But how many issues had to sit there? So you were actually losing money because you had to get that variant, so you had to order 10 copies, and there weren't 10 people interested in that book. And then it would get dog-eared, and people will go through them, and so you either have to put them in bags, which doesn't drive sales because people can't look through them. It's just a product that's kind of they've really done a really great job of just pushing people out of the idea that comics are fun to collect or that they're worth something. The stories aren't worth anything. And, unless you're speculating on some new character that might end up in a Marvel film, what is the point of buying any of the books?
I love tabletop gaming. I'll put this one out there. I wish that there were some tabletop gamers here in the city that I live in, the Philippines. I'd have a gaming night every Friday night. I think that stuff's a lot of fun, but those are a lot more expensive. But I bet you just make a ton more money selling one or two SKUs of a tabletop game than you probably do even selling 30 copies of the same comic book.
Your profit margin on, even like D&D miniatures or Warhammer, things like that are still, 30 to 40%. That's still much better than a comic book.
This is what X Had Heart X said. My shop opened as a comic store 10 years ago. They used to have really rare comics in their display cases, but over the years, Magic got way more popular. Not a bad thing. I love Magic. And Magic took over the display cases. Comics used to have long and short boxes. Those got turned into Magic Commons and bulk rares. They have always had their floppy wall, and it used to be DC, Marvel, Indie, and magazines. Then they had a wall of collected editions. That wall got turned into board games. Basically, the whole shop started as Twin Sons Comics, but now it's Twin Sons Games and Comics and Collectibles. And you have to ask them for comics that they keep in the back and not for sale on the floor as much. They are really profitable with everything that isn't comics. Warhammer and HeroClix and Magic are the main sources of income. So there's still a geek culture out there. There are still people that are absolutely interested in throwing down money on geek stuff. But somehow Wizards of the Coast is a better company than Marvel or DC now.
And Wizards of the Coast will send Pinkertons to your door to threaten you if you accidentally get something early. So to say that they're a better company is mind-boggling. But it's exactly what we've been talking about. Geeks still have expendable income. They're just not spending it on comics anymore. And it's because comics aren't serving their audience. They're serving each other. They're serving the little club. Every time I hear comics is a community, I want to throw up. Comics is a business. Comics should be a business first. It's an industry. You should be selling to your customers. Even Image had to, with their jump to Diamond, had in their press release, had to come out and say, we're serving our customers who are the readers and the retailers. I think that's the first time they've ever admitted that readers are actually their customers. That's how desperate the comics industry is getting. They're actually having to appreciate their customers.
Well, I don't feel appreciated quite yet, and I don't think retailers do either. And that's why they're having to change their names. You don't even see comics in the names of a lot of these things because they're just becoming a wholesale geek culture shops, or they're transitioning away to comic books and making room for everything else that actually does sell. It sucks that we're losing this part of our culture, that comic book shops are making way for all these other things. But Marvel and DC have put these retailers in a position where they can't pay the bills based on what they're selling when it comes to their comic books. There just isn't enough compelling stuff there. There aren't enough good books at DC or Marvel to drive the traffic that you would need to have a thriving business based on comic books. And you could tell these people still love them and they still want to sell comic books. They just can't sell them first.
No, it doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't draw people into the store. It doesn't draw foot traffic. If your store is more than 10% comics, you've either got to be in a major market where you're the only person that's selling, that, or you're on the verge of going out of business. You have to diversify because comics are just continuing on a downward trend. And unfortunately, the same people are in charge. There's nothing that's changing. And the retailers, they have to bear some responsibility for this too. They go to these diamond summits and occasionally there's a little bit of an uprising, but they never put their feet down. They never, there's lots of retailer groups where they could get together and they could really put their foot down and say, enough is enough. We're not doing this. This whole debacle with Marvel charging them $8 for these foil covers and the cover price is $8. So they're actually losing money on the shipping and everything else, the labor to put them in bags and boards or whatever, or what have you. And they're going to have to upcharge and then create that bad feeling with their customer because their customer's not getting maybe their normal club discount, or they have to upcharge it to make a profit. Marvel putting them in that position, that should be it. That should be the hammer dropping. Retailers should be in full revolt and they should be saying, we're not buying any of these. Keep your stupid foil covers, keep your stupid comics, keep your bad series that you churn out and dump on us every month just so that you can kind of maintain market share. We're done. We're not doing this. We're buying manga. We're buying figures. We're buying anime statues. We're diversifying and we're getting out of your business because they're not serving their customer. They're not serving the retailer. And by the transitive factor, they're not serving their readers.
Well, it's crazy. I do hear from some retailers that have called Marvel and gave them an earful and be like, what is this? What is this? You're trying to destroy my business or whatever. But it sounds like they never listen. It never actually causes a change. So I could see a lot more people taking the approach that the retailers you work for and just say, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go find something else to do with my money. I love comic books, but comic books don't love me. When I say comic books don't love me, I'm talking about Marvel and DC, and I don't want to be a business partner with them anymore. And I can see where they get relegated to the back corner, and it feels like you're going into a porn shop.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, Marvel has always been the driving factor of the industry. It's always been the rising tide that raises all ships. And when Marvel struggles, the entire industry struggles. When Marvel is doing well, people come in and then everybody else benefits from that. And we've hit the point where Marvel has just gotten to such a... What's the word I want to use here? Marvel has gotten to such a poor position and just gone full in on greed and cutting the retailers out. And it's that you're killing the market. You're killing the market, and the market's already in trouble. Everybody's moving around. Image just jumped from Diamond, so Diamond's probably not long for this world. They're not going to be a comic distributor anymore. I guess they're just going to be a toy and merchandise distributor because as soon as they can, I'm sure companies like Boom and things like that are going to jump to Lunar as well. They're going to get out of the sinking ship of Diamond. Retailers can't get the discounts anymore. The discounts went from 50% to like 35% as everybody kind of like split off and went to different companies, and now they're going to be even lower. So you're going to have less of a profit margin to be made on comics. It's time to get out. I hate to say it because I love the comic book medium, but unfortunately, the comic book companies, the big two, they don't love us back. They don't love us as readers. They don't love their retailers. All they want to do is sit in their little clubhouse and make the things that they want to make, for each other, and then talk about how, well, you're not really our customer. Well, guess what? You're not going to have any customers, assholes.
It's absolutely disgusting what's happening to local comic book shops, and I hate to see it happen. Recently, when I say recently, maybe within the last year or so, I actually had a conversation with my good friend Yule Carter, who owns a comic book shop, and my good friend Tim Lim, who is actually a comic book artist. We talked about why comic book shops are so important, just as important now as they ever were. If you haven't seen this video talking about LCSs, definitely check it out right now. There's also a link in the video description.